Welcome to BE101x, Behavioral Economics in Action. I want to emphasize the importance of the title of this course, in particular the last two words, in action. But before I do that, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Dilip Soman, and I'm going to be the instructor for BE101x this year on edX. We've all been exposed to the notion of behavioral economics. Perhaps most of you have read books like these. Dan Ariely's book on Predictably Irrational, Dick Taylor's book on Nudging, Chip Heath's book on Being Decisive, and Danny Kahneman's work on Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. A lot of the work has gone on to explain how people make decisions, and in particular, focusing on the kinds of errors that they make in their decision making. We've all been exposed to the fact that human beings are not rational, we make systematic mistakes, that we act in ways which are contrary to our own self-interests. But in this course, we want us to go one step further. We want us to ask the important question, so what? Now, before I go on and talk about the course itself, let me tell you a little bit about the work that's happening here at the Rotman School that supports the course and, in fact, the cluster of activities surrounding the course. I'm part of a research cluster called Behavioral Economics in Action, and that's where the course gets its name from. And what the research cluster does is it takes the principles of behavioral economics, of decision making, and applies them to real-world situations in the world of policy, in the world of social welfare, and in the world of business. Our work focuses on taking learnings from the behavioral lab, from theory, and applying them to help people make better decisions one step at a time. And you'll hear a lot about that research and that approach in the rest of this course. BE101x is going to be divided into three separate chunks. In the first module, we'll cover the basic principles of behavioral economics. We'll look at why people are irrational, what are some of the principles that underlie that irrationality, and we'll also talk about some phenomena that have to do with the way in which people think about money and time and how they manage both those resources. We'll then talk about methods of behavioral economics. And finally, we'll end up with applications of behavioral economics to real-world situations. In particular, we'll cover each of these modules in 2 weeks. As I said, in the first 2 weeks, we'll look at the different philosophies underlying behavioral economics. We'll try and understand what choice architecture is and what it means to nudge people. We'll look at mental accounting, impatience, choice over time, as well as decision difficulty, and ask a fundamental question: what does it truly mean to be rational? In weeks 3 and 4, we'll look at the design of experiments, we'll walk through a behavioral lab, we'll try and understand the structure of an experiment and identify basic principles that you need to use when you design your own experiment. And in week 4, we'll talk about methods using regression to decompose preference and to better understand the structure and judgments that people make in exhibiting preferences and making choices. In weeks 5 and 6, we'll talk about applications. In week 5, we'll spend a lot of our time trying to understand and develop a framework for how you design a nudging intervention. How do we change the environment to steer people towards a particular outcome? And we'll actually walk through the processes that our research cluster has designed to help people come up with that intervention. And finally, in week 6, we'll talk about decision support systems. What can you do through tools, through technology, to let people make better choices? And we'll conclude the course with a broader discussion on what's going to happen next in the field of behavioral economics. In terms of format, what you'll see is that under each week, you'll find a number of different sections, and each sections might have smaller units or subsections within them. We have 3 principal methods that we're going to use to communicate with you. The first is videos. You'll see videos that come in 2 formats. There are videos like this one, where I'm standing up and lecturing, but there are other videos where I'm actually going to work with a slide deck and go through more intricate examples and more complex information by following along with a PowerPoint slide. The second set of materials we'll use are text materials that you'll see on HTML. We'll have 2 kinds of materials there. There'll be abridged versions of articles, as well as simple bullet point summaries of some of the lectures that you've heard before. And at the end of each subunit, you'll see small formative quizzes. These are not quizzes that are meant to test you. They're simply meant to make sure that you have grasped the basic ideas that we've just covered in the most recent module. And finally, at the end of each week, we'll have a debate. What you'll see at the end of each week is a video that contains the opinions of 4 or 5 academics, policymakers, or business people on a particular debate topic. Once you've heard the video, you'll see a link directing you to a polling station where you can express your opinion in terms of which side of the debate you would like to support, and secondly, to make your own comments on a discussion board. Use the debate arena wisely. It is perhaps the most interesting element of this course, because in that arena, you will hear from a number of my colleagues, both from the University of Toronto and from outside, people that I worked with and people that are generally working in the area of choice architecture and behavioral economics, and you'll get to hear their opinions on some of these leading issues. You'll also get a chance to interact with your fellow students in this edX course. Now, let me spend a minute talking to those of you who are going to take this course for a certificate and not those of you who are simply going to audit the class. If you're going to take this class for a certificate, there are 3 things you will need to do to get that certificate. The first is 2 short quizzes. We'll have a quiz at the end of week 3 and a quiz at the end of week 6. These are simple quizzes, they are short, they will have multiple choice questions, and the idea behind the quiz is simply to test your understanding of the material that's been covered in the first 3 weeks and the next 3. Second, at the end of week 6, you will be asked to write a very short piece, which is a reflection piece. It's going to ask you what you have learned in the debates and what your position was on one of the debates and how you changed it over time by interacting with other students and by listening to the positions of other people. And third, we will participate in something called the Nudge Challenge. You will hear more about the Nudge Challenge later on in weeks 5 and 6, but the idea is simple. I'm going to pose to you 2 challenges. Your job is to take those challenges and propose a simple intervention to help address those challenges. Your intervention should be simple, scalable, and cost-effective. And as we go through the course, we will see a number of different tools and techniques that you can use as you design your own intervention. Finally, as you work through the Nudge Challenge, it is important to keep in mind that your Nudge Challenge is going to be reviewed by your fellow students as well as by the instructor. Before I end this segment, I want to give you a brief introduction of my own background and my history. And perhaps the best way of doing that is to show you these 4 maps that tell you where I come from. I grew up in India. I lived in India for a number of years. I did my undergrad in engineering, followed by a degree in management. After that, I worked in sales and advertising for a brief period of time before moving to the United States, where I got a degree in behavioral sciences at the University of Chicago. I taught in the US for a few years before moving to Hong Kong, where I taught at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology till 2003, after which I have been in Canada for the past 10 years, teaching at the University of Toronto. Over the past 20 years, I have spent in academia. I have worked in 4 different countries. I have taught at multiple levels. But at the end of the day, my research interests are captured by the following simple question. Why do people do things that we think they shouldn't do, and in fact that they think they should do, but yet they do? And B, what can I do to help them make what they think is the right choice for them? And that's what I want you to take away from this course.